It's really important that when a horse travels, they're balanced, across their stride. And body balance for me is extremely important, especially on a young horse. When you're starting young horses, teaching them to be balanced from the beginning is very important, because if they're taught to be unbalanced, then you have to go later on and try to fix that, and it's much harder. And sometimes it can get to the point where their muscles are actually trained that way, and then you have a totally new problem that could also result in lameness issues and a lot of different problems. So at the same time that when you're starting young horses and you're training them, you're also training their muscles and their body form and how they're going to carry themselves for the rest of their lives. So it's really important, and I think a lot of people just kind of don't think about that when they're starting young ones. And I say starting young ones, I mean starting a horse at any age. Opie's 5. So I have started horses, very late in their lives, and there's nothing wrong with that. I feel much more comfortable starting a 5-year-old versus a 2-year-old. I worry about the development of a 2-year-old. Very few 2-year-olds that I have had are to the point where they are truly grown into themselves. So I feel much better, waiting, and I don't have a problem waiting. For me, competitively, it's not an issue. So, I have no problem waiting. A rider also has to be, working at it. I think people have the misconception that the horse is doing all the work and the rider is doing very little. They're just sitting up there, and that's not the case. Especially whenever you're riding a horse and really actively riding and helping the horse. And I think that is an essential thing, and something that I am really, really big on, is helping the horse. When you think about the weight of a person, I can be very heavy. If I am at the end of a rope and I choose to be dead weight, my 130 pounds can feel like 230 pounds. So if you are carrying yourself when you are riding, there's a big difference between carrying your weight when you are riding and making that horse carry your weight when you're riding. And so that's another thing as far as starting horses that's important. Young horses are going to struggle more with an unbalanced rider because of the fact that they're trying to balance themselves. They're trying to, learn where to put their feet, learn how to move, learn how to carry themselves. And then when you pop an unbalanced rider into the equation, it's just going to make it that much harder for that horse. And I think a lot of times with young horses, horses, I don't know how to say it other than young horses. Maybe I should say inexperienced horses. We'll just put it that way, because they're not always young, more so inexperienced. So with inexperienced horses is you're in the process of teaching. So for me, I like to make it as clear to a horse as possible when I'm teaching. And that's irrelevant of age, irrelevant of what I'm doing. I want to make sure that they are not confused and that they are not distracted. Now, when I say distracted, I mean as far as headgear. That's why you see me ride bitless a lot until I get a horse to a point where I'm like, okay, now I'm comfortable moving them into a bridle. But I ride bitless a lot because I don't want them worried about what's in their mouth, and a lot of horses get highly distracted by that. And it's no different than people. If you try to chew gum and run at the same time, you're going to have a pretty hard time. And maybe choke on your gum. So I would not be able to do it. I would be extremely distracted. Even talking right now, I wouldn't be able to chew gum. I guess I'm not, in that aspect, I'm not a multitasker. But you are asking horses to multitask to a very high degree, and riders have to do the same. So I think when you take away that bit, that it takes away that distraction. And that's for me. I just feel that a lot of horses get highly distracted. When you're trying to teach them to move off your legs, when you're trying to teach them to stay in between your reins, that's just one less thing for them to worry about. And it creates a little bit of a better feel, I think. So, anyhow, what else did I want to say? never, when I'm riding an inexperienced horse, never do I do something and I don't have an answer to what I'm doing. I get really upset when people say, I just do it because that's what I do. You should always know, when you do something with a horse, you should always know why you are doing it and the reasoning behind it. It's not good when you're just doing something and you have no understanding of why you're doing it. For me in particular, I can't just, and I don't know, everybody is not wired like me, but I can't do something and not understand why I'm doing it. It has to mechanically make sense to me. It has to be practical to me. So anytime I use a piece of equipment, anytime I ply my leg in a certain way, every single thing that I do, I know why I'm doing it and how it's going to affect the horse and what I'm trying to relay to the horse. So I think that's really, really important, and something that when you're riding, you really need to think about is, why am I doing this and how is this affecting my horse and what am I trying to accomplish? Because I think that really gets, misstrewn. People just don't think about what they're really doing. And it's so essential when you're on that animal, because they are a living, breathing animal. They are trying to figure out what is going on and what you're teaching them. So it's really hard when you have a gray area in your own mind. If you're doing something and you don't really understand what you're doing, that can make it 10 times harder for the horse. So I think that it's really, really important to understand the method, or not so much, or the method that you're doing, or whatever you're doing. You need to really understand why you are doing it. So that's another thing as far as riding inexperienced horses that I think is really essential and important, along with, how they carry themselves and making sure that they're moving correctly and moving balanced.